Hi. So I've got another one today that I think you guys will like. I bought this Demon Prince secondhand from a local shop. I call it an eBay rescue just because that's what people understand. Anyway, I stripped it. I shaved off that little icon on the shoulder. Um, Here I'm priming it with my usual Vallejo black primer. It's a water-based polyurethane primer. I think it works pretty well. I'm going to do the wings with a little base coat of blue here. So I've sped it up obviously, but it's kind of subtle, but it'll give a nice sort of undertone. You'll see later how it interacts with the other colors, and it makes a nice sort of warm, sort of alive feel. Now here I've taken, it's like a brick red sort of color, and I'm kind of going over it. I think it's terracotta from Vallejo is the color. And I'm just doing it in the middle of the membranes here as best I can so it can transition softly into the blue. Now here I've taken a wet wipe that's all dry and I'm stretching it out a little bit. Now if you've ever done a marble type of tutorial, the same idea. And here's that terracotta color and some orange. I've mixed them together and I've stretched the wet wipe over the wings and sort of just spraying through the holes all over. But and you want to make probably a little bit bigger holes than I made here and a little more consistently. And don't let it get too wet when you're doing that either. So now I'm mixing some fluorescent orange into that previous mixture, just what was left over, just to brighten it up a little bit, hitting the high spots. The Pro Acryl fluorescent orange is really nice. I think you'll really like it if you're ever looking for anything like that. It does take a lot of coats, but it's really nice. Again, don't let it get too wet because you don't want the wet wipe to stick. Dryer sheets also work really nicely for this. So we're just going to peel it back gently. It's so many little spiky parts that get snagged, but you'll kind of get the idea here. Now I did end up going back and kind of repositioning it and adding more orange spots to give it a little more consistency. Because like I said, I should have probably done bigger holes more consistently over it. You want to get it as close as you can to the surface as well. So you might need to hold it down a little bit. So there we go. Now I'm stippling on some orange here, some fluorescent orange, a little bit more mixed in with that. Just stippling it with this makeup brush. Dabbing it on like that. The makeup brush is nice because it has a nice broad head. And we want to give a sort of a translucent kind of feel to it. And that's the whole exercise here is that. Now I'm going to do sort of a filter with this red ink from Vallejo. You can use any kind of red ink you want. This is just what I have. And just go slow. Turn the needle control in pretty far because you really don't want to overdo it. But we're just going to filter over the orange. I'm going to go back to this yellow color here and just do some highlights. And again, this is with my nice Sable Blend brush. Somebody had asked me in a previous video what the brand was, and it was hard to see because it's been mostly worn off, but it's Rosemary and Company Series 771. It's about a 3/4 inch long script liner. XV88 for the base coat for the skin. My idea with my word bearers is I wanted them to be like desert people, like they sort of are in the lore, so I wanted a kind of olive skin tone. So I'm doing that with my whole army, pretty much, except for the cultists. So now I've gone over the whole thing. I also kind of skipped a step here, I apologize. I did go back and spray out the armor with white and it's sort of the zenithal thing. I masked off the wings with some aluminum foil, but it didn't record. I thought it was recording. But anyway, now I'm going back with my Flesh Terrors red, like I usually do for my word bearers. And if you're curious about how I do this armor, you can go and watch my word bearers tutorial from a few weeks ago or a month ago. The black is Black Templar from Games Workshop, Citadel. Just doing that all over the shoulder pads, which I kind of like to do on my HQ or sort of veterans in the army. Okay, so that's all base coated. And now I'm gonna use this Seraphim Sepia over the skin tones as a all over wash. And Gravelord Gray over the metal. That's just because it reminds me of the kind of the old style of Null Oil. I really like it. I've mostly used this now instead of the new Null Oil. I just like the effect that it gives. It kind of makes it look a little bit leaden, but then when you follow up with a dry brush of a brighter silver, and I'm going to do that with some Stormhost silver here, it really really makes it look nice. A lot of good contrast. So I like to use, when I'm doing skin tones, I like to use at least 3 or 4 tones. So these are the ones I'm using. So these 3 plus the XV88. I just think when you use more than 1 or 2 paints, it gives it a much more alive kind of feel. Because skin is all kinds of different colors really, and it's translucent. So we're gonna thin all of this down with some medium. I like the Citadel stuff. It seems to work really well. At least 50-50. And then I just kind of add from these other paint pots as I'm going along, and sort of gives it a nice natural transition. The trick I think with glazing is you want it to get to the point where it covers poorly, so that when it dries, it'll actually dry down and give you a nice transition. So you'll just go over increasingly small volumes of area until you just hit the very highest spots, like what I'm doing here. And I kind of worked out a scheme of like the order I wanted to do this in beforehand. So when you're glazing, you want to get a little bit of paint on the tip of the brush and then get most of it off. It's not quite dry like a dry brush, but you don't want to be pushing wet paint around. You want to be putting ultra thin layers on that dry almost instantly. And then you can build them up, and that's how you get the nice transitions. And I really think that glazing works great for transitions if you can take the time. You know, I think transitions with an airbrush always sort of have a certain quality about them. They look like they were done with an airbrush, whereas with glazing, it can be more natural looking. I'm just hitting the very highest spots here. Okay, so Druchii Violet now. My theory with this is complementary colors. So there's a lot of kind of yellowish sort of tones in this skin tone, and the complement to yellow is purple. So I'm shading in purple in the dark recesses, like around the eyes and in the deep recesses of the muscles. So I'm just going to go all over the model and hit the very deepest recesses with the purple. And again, you know, yellow, and it's not focusing here, but yellow and purple. So we have our game ink from Vallejo. I've cut that with a little bit of medium. I don't want it to go on super heavy or be like yellow like Simpsons. I just want kind of a subtle sort of filter on some of the highest points of the muscles, because I don't want it to come out like washed out looking. I want it to have a little bit of color, and it seems a little weird at first, but then it's a really nice effect. Stormhold Silver, I love this one for dry brushing. It's a really bright, easy to use silver. You just want to make sure that it's nicely mixed up. I keep a little like a sculpting tool, a little metal sculpting tool on hand to really reach in and stir it all up. I find that with this and certain other metallics, the flake likes to sink to the bottom, and if you can manually stir it up, then it'll work really nicely. Mephiston Red, I also used Evil Sun's Scarlet, which is a little bit orangey or a little bit brighter. I didn't get that on camera, but we're going to just do a glaze here. Again, we're going to do at least 2:1 medium to paint, and just do really ultra thin layers, and it'll give you a nice transition. And you can work a little bit of orange in there on the highest spots, and it'll give you a really nice, bright, natural look. Okay, striking scorpion green. I've gone ahead, anywhere I want to do green, I've painted a little bit of white underneath, because it's contrast paint. It really is going to be highly dependent on what's underneath it. So all these little eyes, and then the eyes of the model itself, I've hit with some bold titanium white. I'm going to make a little mound of skulls on the base. I've decided that the base needs something fun on it, so I'm snipping out a bunch of skulls from the Citadel Skulls kit and just going to glue them around in a little circle. And I've taken some Milliput epoxy putty. I haven't mixed it with any green stuff or anything like that, just made a little lump of it and put it down there in the middle, just so that I can build the skulls on top of it and make it look like a pile. It's easier than using just skulls, so keep adding more and more here, and I'm putting a little bit of the glue in between, sort of hitting it so that it flows in between all the skulls and they kind of reinforce one another. Just little adjustments. Now here I'm adding some candles, and if you want to see how I do this, you can go back and look at my Rhino conversion, the Demos Rhino that I did, where I made all these little candles out of polystyrene rod. It's great because you can use plastic glue on it. It's very easy to work with, so I'm just kind of sticking these randomly on there so it'll look kind of evil and chaosy. I was sort of inspired by a friend of mine who put a bunch of skulls around or helmets of Space Marines around one of the bases of his greater demons. So here it is. Here's the finished product. I painted the base. Again, if you want to see the base, my very first tutorial video was of wasteland bases. Just follow that, and that'll get you this effect. I'm pretty happy with how it came out. It's a great model.